right, everyone. Welcome to the Stoa. Looks like we'll have a nice, intimate day today at the Stoa. So feel free to turn on your camera to get some light in the Stoa. And today we have Anne-Marie Keppel with us. Anne-Marie is a death doula, which I imagine we'll get into in a moment. And she's the author of a book called Death Nesting, Ancient and Modern Death Doula Techniques, Mindfulness Practices, and Herbal Care. Our friend Daniel Schmachtenberger actually mentioned Anne-Marie at, I think, his last appearance at the Stoa, and he connected us together. Hence, she's here today. And it has been kind of a theme at the Stoa. We had Stephen Jenkinson on recently, and Stephen's actually coming in for a 3-part. He's going to be our philosopher in residence in August, which is going to be cool. So I imagine this is going to be a continuing theme at the Stoa. So how today's going to work is I'll take Anne-Marie in a moment, and she'll share her thoughts on what is a death doula and her book and process of death nesting, and then we'll have a conversation, and we'll pivot to Q&A. So if you have any questions or you'd like to share anything, just indicate that in the chat, and I'll call on you, and you can mute yourself and you can share. And this will be on YouTube, so just keep that in mind. I can read anything on your behalf. So that being said, Anne-Marie, welcome to the Stoa.
Thank you so much, Peter. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm also happy to know that you're Canadian. I feel like I'm in much better company. People in Vermont love Canada. We actually wish that you would absorb us into Canada. We hope for this. So thank you for inviting me here. And I did listen to Stephen Jenkinson's interview or discussion with you, and it's wonderful. I very much admire his work, and I'm often confused by it, and all of the very good things that kind of rattle us out of our thinking. And he uses words in a way that sometimes I don't understand. I wish I could pause it sometimes and go back and try and understand what he meant by that word used in that way. So thank you for those of you who've come. This is kind of new to me. I love the concept of the Stoa because usually I'm being interviewed. And so there's certain questions and a certain agenda that the interviewer has. And I find that I have my role as a death doula, and I'll go into that. And then I have my own personal views and opinions. And when you're a death doula, they're not really supposed to necessarily overlap. So having the freedom to just talk here about what my actual thoughts are is really refreshing. So I wrote this book, Death Nesting, Ancient and Modern Death Doula Techniques, Mindfulness Practices, and Herbal Care. And I wrote it because I understood that there was a certain amount of information that I had that should be shared with people as quickly as possible, as fast as possible. It's very basic information that everybody should know. And the fastest way to do that to me was to write a book, and it's self-published, which was a ridiculous pain in the ass. I understand now why there are publishers that have this as a job. So I am the work I do. I was a licensed nurse assistant, and I was a hospice volunteer and doing death doula work, caring for the dying. I've been a meditation instructor. I've been meditating since I was a small child, and Reiki master. So I had all of like this really beautiful foundation of very basic care and kind of spiritual, I don't know if I should say understandings, but awareness, and the physical care for people who are dying, I thought was something that people should know right away. We should be being taught this in schools from a very young age, and making the connection of the natural world. And how life cycles roll through our world and our environment and periods of time, and that it's something that we don't have any control over. And how do we become okay with that? How do we normalize the fact that we don't know? We don't know, and it's a mystery. And then yet here are some things that you can know. This is what the body sounds like and smells like and looks like when it's dying. Those are things that we can comprehend. So yeah, so those are the things that I put into the book Death Nesting. The concept of death nesting is twofold. When somebody is dying, you may want to prepare a nest for them, kind of like when somebody is about to give birth and you want to prepare the environment to make sure the bed is comfortable, and perhaps that people keep their voices down. Maybe there's some specific music that's playing. So creating that nest and that environment for the one who is dying is it should be something sacred that we all engage in our families and our communities. And the other part of death nesting is simply that it's what we do in our everyday lives. We don't really realize this, but how we live our life will impact our death, no matter how it is that we die, whether it's sudden, whether it's prolonged. um, how we live our life will impact that. And this is so to explain that, by saying I love you to people, or forgiving people a little bit sooner, perhaps letting go of grudges, um, being okay with learning how to be vulnerable. Those kinds of things are going to come into play at the end of your life when you're dying. And if you have lived your life with that awareness, it will then ease, not make perfect, but ease the time when you're actually going to be dying. Even if it's of COVID, even if it's on the side of the road, these are just very basic um, things that you can practice now. So I consider that to be death nesting also. So a death doula is somebody who has the intention of um, helping somebody die. So perhaps um, creating the environment that it feels comfortable to die in. They can sit vigil, they can help physically, they can run errands, a lot like a hospice volunteer might do. But a death doula tends to be more involved, actively involved, and they work work with, work for themselves. They're independent. There's no umbrella over what a death doula is and does. It's a little confusing, but we can get back to that. If any of you have heard of a birth doula, it's very similar. So this is just on the other end of life. So okay, so now I'll tell you a little story. All right. So the death doula movement came about, you know what, I'm going to back up even more. Okay, once upon a time, throughout all of time, around the world, people have been dying, and there have been people who have been assisting those who are dying. And it's nothing new. It's not even anything amazing. It's very basic. And it once was done in all of our homes. And we cared for the one who was dying, and then they died in the house. And then we had the dead body that we had to dispose of and work with and touch and move and bury, or whatever it happened to be. It was all very intimate. So what I'll refer to now is just specifically in the United States. And this does apply to Canada too. Our societal places where we actually have some real challenges, the United States and Canada are very, very much alike. So what happened was, specifically in the United States, the Civil War in the late 1860s, and then embalming came popularized soon after from there, and then soon after. And then the flu of 1918. And there were a lot of deaths over those years, and people were tired of death. It was, we were bombarded with it. We were frightened. And along came funeral homes, and along came hospitals, which there were only, very few and far between, but the hospital boom in the early 1900s came about. So then people had a place to send their loved ones who were dying. They had hospitals to care for their dying, and they had funeral homes to care for their dead. And I think, I wasn't there, but I think that people were kind of happy to move that along, because along with this came the miracles of medicine. Antibiotics came out, and people saw that it really was, technology and medicine became a kind of God. And so it's not just that they didn't want to care for their loved ones who were dying. They also thought they could be healed. And of course, many were, when they were sent to a hospital. We have overdone that now to the point where technology and medicine has allowed us to pretty much push aside anybody who is not functioning in our very productive societies. So Stephen Jenkinson was just talking about how the elderly or the differently abled are pushed aside, and we have children in daycares. And so now what can happen is the society we've created for ourselves has allowed us to get back to work and stay working and be productive and the top of your game, and no vulnerability. We should be strong, and all of these really ailments that we weren't so detached from all of those things that are really harming us a little more than 100 years ago. So all of the things that put the pressure on all of us now to be productive and to be successful and to be dignified, all of those are basically cured with death and dying. You realize that it's okay to slow down. In fact, you have to slow down, and you do need to take time to apologize, and you do need to practice letting go. And all of these demands that society demands of us are gone once you are vulnerable and dying. So along with all of these, the technology and the God that we have made out of medicine, came our phones. And so we have the ability to have instant gratification, to change our mind, to change what we're viewing, to change what we're feeling in a split second. We can swipe. TikTok, as much as I love TikTok, is strangely really harmful, right? So people, they'll show you in 30 seconds how much they feel. I'm feeling this in 30 seconds, then boop, and then it's on to a cat video, right? Whatever it happens to be. So we have this beautiful glimpse into everybody's lives, that they're feeling these different things. I'm really angry. I'm so pissed. For 60 seconds, I'm going to show you how pissed I am, and then gone. So it's nice to be able to see that people are still feeling these different things, and that's very acceptable, but it's within a time frame. And these need to be, we don't have any kind of patience to slow down and feel those things and examine them. And our mealtime with our families, we don't all like our families, but meal times with families are taken over by technology. And the only death that we actually see now is in movies and video games, and they're mostly violent, or they're headline news. And without any without anyone to show us, without seeing people who are dying, we've suddenly glamorized death. And it's something out there and away from us, and it's scary and it's violent. And so the death doula movement was trying to bring some of this back down to earth, was trying to bring um, normalized conversations about death and dying, but then also preparing people for, when so and so is dying, you can take care of them yourself. You have this ability. It's not something that you have to hand over to professionals. It's not something that you need a certificate or a certification to be able to do. This is something you can do. And when somebody dies, when your loved one dies, you can actually take care of them yourself. And home funerals are legal all over the United States. And in Canada, they are as well, but I think you have to have a funeral director in certain provinces, and the same thing in a few states in the United States. So what happened with the death care movement is, along with the slow foods movement, the death doula movement wanted to bring back death care. And what happened was people saw an opportunity to make money. And so then, rather than it being this organic kind of grassroots movement to spread education, it became very popularized as a professional movement. And now this is a way you can make money. And this is how you can start a business for yourself. And this will, you better prepare your business card, because you're going to have so much business, and our aging population, we're all needed. But that's a problem, because what we've done then is given away all of the power yet again to another professional, to another somebody that says, I will take care of this for you. And it's harmful. So the death doula movement has missed its mark. And I almost think that there should be two different names for it. So now there's the death doula work, and we do need death doulas. We need more people in hospitals and nursing homes and caring for the dying. And that is not even a question. But what has been lost is the actual grassroots movement of normalizing death and dying, bringing education into the school systems, and slowing down enough to understand that we need to see death. We need to smell death. We need to be close to death, because that awakens in us a lot of the things that are healing, a lot of ways that we can be healed. So, did you lose sound from me?
Oh, no, we're good. That was just someone in the chat, Evan. He lost it, but we can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. So this is that's kind of and what I have just done is I've actually kind of critiqued and criticized my own work, but I think that has to be that way. Bernie Sanders, wasn't it, the whole campaign was what is it? Not me, us. And that's how the death care movement needs to be. And instead, it's been passed over to me, 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 me. I've got this new certificate. I'm going to help you. I've got the knowledge. Come see me. And that's not helpful. So I'm feeling like we need a new term, actually, to if there is going to be another movement to get death care normalized, bring into my death doula course is based on community death doula work, not professional death doula work. And it's called Village Death Care. And it's the Village Death Care citizen. So you're just one of many. And the idea is that you support the family and teach them, tell them everything they know, so that they can do that for all of their loved ones. So that you're not the center where everything evolves around. You've dispersed it, and it's intentional. And I've wondered, with some of the death doulas who then get their certificate and they do this beautiful training. And they then are disappointed that they're not getting the amount of business that they hoped that they would get. And I wonder, what if you never got the business? Was your training worth it to you? What if you only are planting the seeds? What if you're only embracing and living and teaching death education and you never get a dime for it? Is that worth it to you? Because we've collapsed, we've caved and hidden death for 150 years. It's going to take a long time, long after we're here, for this to hopefully come back around again. And if this pandemic couldn't do it, then I don't know what it's going to take. I haven't seen a whole lot of societal changes, and I realize we're still in the midst of the pandemic. We are. There's so much unknown, but I don't know what it will take. So I think there is a lot of us out there that are just kind of working blindly, but it's with good intentions.
Yeah, so feel free to put your questions in the chat. So what's alive for me? It's like everything you said, it was like, super resonating. And it makes a lot of sense to me that learning this should not be instrumentalized just to make money, monetize it. It's sort of like a life skill that is essential, that went missing in our culture. In your course, I think what's the Village Death Care Citizen course. I think it's sold out now, but there's one coming up in November. I'm considering taking it. I'm really interested in what it entails, and like, so how do you teach this stuff as a life practice?
Oh, that's so good. Thank you for asking that. So the course itself is based on mindfulness and self-love. So what we work on first is ourselves, obviously. So before you get a to-do list to check off for somebody else, you really need to do a lot of introspective work. And so I try to encourage people to really, really forgive themselves, to really love themselves. What would that take? What would that feel like? Because no matter what we do here on this earth, we're going to die alone. And when we die, there's only us. There's just us. So everything that we're feeling, that we've thought, that we've experienced, all comes down to your last experience of those things. And if you can have some self-love, it will be that much easier. And self-love, forgiveness, we're not taught those things. We're not even, oh my God, people, it could be confused with, having a really big ego, which is so different. It's so incredibly different. So the foundation is first self-love and forgiveness. And I find one of the best ways to do that is through ancestry, through ancestral research, and understanding that a lot of people came before you and they all had their own stories and their traumas and their hardships. Some of them were colonizers, some of them were the colonized, different murders and family secrets and illnesses. And we're not the only ones that are going through all of this. This happened to our own people. And studying that and understanding one of the points is to help you feel less significant, actually. Like, this is not just about you. So it's a combination of self-love, where it's all about you and just you, but then also realizing that you're part of something so much bigger. And and how those two come to play together. And when you realize, you're like, oh, I really, I don't know why I really hate that person so much. And why am I so mean to that person? Or why can't I let go of that? And then you see that, if you study adverse childhood experiences and then understand family traumas and ancestral traumas, they all are playing a role in everything that we do. And the more you can break that apart and understand that, the more you can forgive yourself and hopefully love yourself. And then we go on to, okay, so when you're sitting next to somebody else, sitting at their bedside, and they say, I can't forgive myself. It happens. It'll make me cry just thinking about it. It happens. And they only have, a day left. They only have a few minutes left, whatever it happens to be. You can genuinely understand where they're coming from. Say, oh, I know what that feels like because I've touched upon that in myself, or I know that I have to work on that myself. So self-examination is essential. And to pretend that this can be done in a 9 or 10 week course is ludicrous. This is the course and all of the death doula trainings, which are very, very different, by the way. To think that you're going to walk away with your certificate and you're ready to go is nonsense. It's a good place to start. But I try to let people know that this is just the first step of something you've awakened, which now should become your entire life.
Yeah, I like that. That philosophy quote comes to mind. Philosophy is the preparation for death. So it's like, this is not just something to get your certificate. Is a lifelong process. So we'll pivot to some questions. Nathan, you had a few questions. I'll take you in.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So my question is, where have the celebrations gone in death? And what are the best ways we can usher in a celebratory death for the people we love?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Death is a celebration. It can be, but for us right now, personally, I think it's less important to have a celebration when somebody dies and more important to just feel like shit and to cry and say, why did this happen? What's going on? And have that be okay. And I encourage people that I talk to that if they have if they break down in the grocery store and they're crying, to tell the people around them, say, my father just died. And tell work, I can't go into work. Email everybody at work. I am feeling so sad. Even though my friend died last month, for some reason, this is hitting me really hard and I can't come into work today. So this is, I think, getting people, we need to break some things now, which is hiding and suppressing the sadness that needs to be broken. Like, we need to publicly mourn, and funerals are the only acceptable place to mourn and to grieve, except we changed it into calling it a celebration of life. What? Yeah, you can celebrate life, sure. And it can be, in some certain circumstances, you can feel a great relief, which of course sometimes makes people feel very guilty. But if somebody has been, a very long-term illness, or suicide is a very tricky one, because the person was in such turmoil, they felt like they could not keep going with their life the way it was. Do you celebrate their life then? Do you mourn their death? Suicide is a very hard thing to examine, but we should talk about how hard it is to examine it. So other cultures do a beautiful job with celebrating departure and celebrating death and on to the next life, or Valhalla. Has anybody watched Vikings? Or did you watch Vikings? They're all psyched to get killed out on the battlefield. So it's dealt with in different ways. But for us, you know, one beautiful tradition that has still been kept up in Ireland is that when there's a funeral procession, everybody on the road stops. They'll pull over. So cars will pull over and let them pass. People will stop walking. People will stop biking on the street, and they literally stop for death. And I think that's beautiful. I think we could use some of that. Can you imagine what would happen in, I don't know, Montreal or in New York City if the hearse went by and it was customary for everybody to just say, whoa, just hold up.
Any follow-up, Nathan?
No, thanks. That was a great perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evan, you had a question.
Yeah, let me just go back and find it. So I guess my question is, so when you were talking, it made me think of something that seemed like maybe a deeper, maybe more general phenomenon, which I would call the medicalization and professionalization of just basically an increasing number of aspects of human life or being a human over time. And it seems like it's really hard to me to address the issues that you're mentioning around, say, the depersonalization of death and dying without maybe also having to address that whole thing. So I'm curious if you think it's possible, meaningful to address just the death part of this in relative isolation, or if what's required is a much broader pushback against this particular manifestation of what I think is often wrongly called progress.
Oh, okay. So I'm a little bit confused by your question, but hang on. So tell me if I'm going in the right direction. So one thing that has happened is, along with technology and increase in knowledge and demand for science and living at all costs, has been the extending of life and keeping people medically alive for much longer. And then along with that has come medical assistance in death. So we've now extended life medically and now terminating life medically. So we're at a very strange time period where nobody wants to be vulnerable for any reason at all, and we want total control over our living and our dying. And there's nothing left for just the unknown except accidents at this point, where the unknown has become almost creepy, and the right thing to do would be to know when and how, and to have total control over it. So can you clarify though, because I might have missed.
Yeah, I mean, I like everything you just said. It's not precisely what I was trying to get at. The thing that I'm trying to get at is like, so I think it has to do with the increasing trend towards social atomization and the focus on the individual rather than individual as member of a larger group field that has happened over the past several hundred years. And so what I'm getting at is that, for example, like we have identified, say in the case of mental health, we've identified all these specific mental health disorders, which like there may have been some similar symptomologies in, say, the pre-modern or ancient worlds, but the whole idea of this as a uniquely individual disorder, right, is fairly modern. The locus of the disorder in the individual, right? And the same thing applies to death. The locus of death as being relevant primarily to that individual, and therefore something to be sort of hidden away from the broader, social field in which they are embedded. And so I'm wondering, like, okay, when we try to do this thing that I think is a very good idea that you're talking about with death, with kind of reclaiming our relationship to it, then it seems like, well, this almost implies that we need to do the same thing with like almost all of the stuff that we sort of medicalize with the specific locus of being centered on the individual, right? Because I think, say, in the mental health case, the mental health crisis is we don't look at it at the level of society as a whole being unwell, right? Or we rarely do, right? We look at individuals and say you're well or unwell without considering, I forget who said the quote, but like being insane is a sane reaction to an insane world or something like that, right? And so just something along those lines. I wonder if it's like you pull on this one thread of the tapestry, which is our relationship to death, and it sort of tugs the entire relationship to our bodies, to medical care, to what it means to be an individual, which I think is probably not even really a thing the way that Western society really conceives of it. So I was just wondering if you had thoughts along the lines of like how we can relate this to the sort of the rest of these problems that may be linked to the over individualization or the over atomization of, you know, this focus on the individual as the locus of analysis.
Yes to everything you just said. I feel like you kind of just like proposed it and explained it at the same time. So we're disconnected from everything and everyone and from our planet. We're so far away from feeling like we like all of us, and it's getting worse and worse. Like, and I feel like probably the biggest problem is that we're getting further removed from the earth itself, the soil under our feet. And if you know anything about the chakra system, our root chakra is dangling. It is dangling. It's not tethered to anything or anyone. We're individuals with severed root chakras all over the place. And I think it's creating an environment for people to literally feel disconnected from each other. Take a look at the suicide rate. Why do you think people feel like they don't belong here? Like we're not. I feel untethered sometimes, and I consciously make an effort to be here and to stay grounded and to connect with. And you know, when people are dying, it's one of the common, if you read, you know, end of near-death experiences where people are overwhelmed with the feeling and the understanding of unity, of oneness, and that they are not even a fraction of, but literally part of, in all of it. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with all of this is our disconnection from the planet. We're being called like the indoor generation. But generation at this point doesn't even make much sense, because generations used to be like gaps in time, but technology has shortened all of them. So our generations are tinier and tinier, not just on whether or not you had a baby, but now it's more who you are and what you believe or don't believe, etc. And yeah, that's I think causing problems.
Thanks. I love that. That when you brought in the chakras, I often think of like a 0th chakra below the root one that we have to connect our root to. And that seems like, I really like the way you answered that. So thank you.
Mm-hmm, thank you.
Thanks, Evan. Flavius has a good follow-up. You're on mute, Flavius, if, yeah.
Hello. Thank you for this. Can you hear okay? Should I read what I just wrote, something, or just say it?
Yeah, feel free to read or just riff off what you'd like to share or ask.
I was thinking about suffering doulas, where to find that. I was thinking that I'm dealing with chronic pain for like a year almost now. Never had any kind of long illness, because I had COVID and then like long COVID, and some days are very painful. And after listening to all the we were discussing here, I kind of realized that there's this, I spend a lot of energy trying to appear like I'm in a certain way, and that I think brings more pain. Like instead of, and the Stoa has been very, very helpful so far. I've just begun the journaling sessions every day. And this exercise of people, we get together and we write our journals, and everyone is trying to be as sincere as possible. And well, I think this opens the door to what first thing I need, which is to be more, I don't know, it's like dropping this mask. The thing is, many people, when you drop it, they withdraw because they're afraid of pain. So I'm open to questions or anything. So I'm an open book, but thank you. I knew about doulas. I actually worked as an artistic doula once, but yeah. But now I'm looking for suffering doulas, really. I think I kind of found a doula space here too, but okay, that's my question. It's a question.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you're having chronic pain. Yeah, we want people to cheer up, right? We want people to cheer up so that we can feel better. And that's a sickness. I think that is the sickness. And as you said, trying to maintain some kind of facade or cheer up for other people is bringing more pain. At this point, I think it's okay to, we might end up with a disaster if we actually do this, but I think we need it. I think people need to tell people how they're feeling for real. And not just, no, I don't mean tell people. There was enough telling. Everybody wants to tell, their opinion or whatever it is. I wish that there would be a vulnerability movement, just as there has been a Me Too movement, that sometimes, the pendulum needs to swing to the other extreme. So if we have hidden our pain and our sadness for so many decades, generations, centuries, I mean, this is nothing new, but that we actually need to overexpose it at this point. And what if that became normal? What if it was okay to just try it sometime? If you go to a store, pick a small store where they have some time, a small general store, a small market. And when they say, "Hi, how are you today?" and they're checking out your items, tell them. Say, "Actually, I'm having a really hard day." And you don't need to go into it, but tell them, say that to them. Because when I've done that, most of the time it's returned with, "Oh my gosh, me too. I had the hardest time this morning and I'm just doing everything I can to get through the day today." Or, "I'm so sorry." Or they hand you a Kleenex, anything. Most of the time when you are that honest, people will respond. And the ones that don't will just walk away. That's okay too. But I think we need to swing in that direction. And I like that, a suffering doula, a doula that allows you, that can witness your pain and your suffering without even trying to fix it, but just say, "Ah, that's where you are."
Yeah, this things coming up. I remember when I was in the corporate world, we were teaching social skills, oddly enough, too, in that setting. And then one of the coworkers started crying because it was the anniversary of both their parents dying a year before. And then someone came to her, and then it's just sort of like, "Don't cry. And that was the phrase. And the tell there was a closure to it, and just that, and it came across as compassion or whatever, but it was just sort of like, oh man, that line, don't cry, that just, said it all. Did you have a follow-up, Flavius? You have your hand up?
Yes. And the thing is, it's not binary at all. I feel also a great deal of love, and I can still, so it's also like, I'm not exactly lying when I'm saying I'm okay, because I am glad to be alive and I do feel people's love, but it's just that it's complex. Actually, the truth is, when people ask me how are you, I want to say I'm really bad. I'm great, and it's true. It's like in some aspects, like emotionally, or there are moments when I'm just drowning in many ways. But when I'm emotionally, and that's the thing of the suffering doula, when I'm emotionally contained and touched, it's like, okay, I feel the pain, but I also feel the love. So it's strange. It's unbearable, but it's also not, it's okay. It's a new experience. I think I'm learning. I feel I'm learning. I think I'm growing up. And when that doesn't happen, and especially when you're alone, or with people that cannot stand that, and just they even reject you because of your pain. So it's complicated.
It can be both, right? Sometimes when I have talked with people who are in a tremendous amount of pain and they're grieving, it's good to be lost in that for a little while or for however long. But then when it's time to start looking into other things, it's not necessarily the time to cheer up yet, because you're changed, you're different, you're now going to be changed for the rest of your life. That's what death does. But they oftentimes will find comfort in other people's stories, other people's grief, other people's sadnesses. And there is a beautiful, gosh, am I going to remember the name of it right now? When I recall, I'll put it in the link below the YouTube video when it goes on YouTube. But there's a beautiful story of a compilation of all of these people's stories who are grieving, and their story of how it went and how they worked with it. And oftentimes when you're in that place, when you're really sad, watching other people's hardships, sounds a little strange, can feel comforting, and almost like, there comes a point when it almost feels good, because you can find beauty and comfort and love in that sadness, in that hopelessness. And some people become addicted to it. And then hopefully they become really good poets or artists or musicians because you can get lost in that feeling. But I think that is, I think you said it, it's both. It can be both good and bad, sad and almost happy, content.
Thank you, Flavius. Do you have time for one more question? Yeah, Ola, you had a question.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, Anne, Mary. My name is Ola. I think I've seen too many deaths in my life and I've been close to death countless times, that I have an idea of what I would like my auspicing moments to be, right? I don't want to see no cries. I want people playing and dancing outside. I don't want no cry, not a single tear, right? But at the same time, I'm also aware of the fact that African cultures have like their way of doing things, and how they like, usually the moment, the party is after the person is dead, not before, not during, right? So like this idea makes a lot of sense to me, considering how I have thought of my own death and how I want, how I would like it to be. So my question here is like, where does Western culture and African culture intersect? You know, especially when these type of processes are like more geared toward how to auspice the king when he's dying, or someone that is like more important than the, you know, every normal, everyday people. So where is the intersection? And I was trying to play with salsa and people just playing and dancing salsa while I'm on my deathbed and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so where is the intersection and what are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There are some people and some cultures who don't need any more death around them. There are people in war-torn lands that do not need to just have more sadness and proclaim whatever it is. It's hard for me to understand. It's hard. I'm a white woman. It's hard for me to understand African culture. I've grown up in the United States, but I know that what I'm suggesting is not for every culture. This is what I'm suggesting is for the United States and Canada specifically, and just keeping that. There is such a disconnect here with understanding different cultures' ways of mourning and the way different races mourn. And there's an intolerance that is so prevalent throughout our entire society. So, for example, here in the United States, there are, I think, only 5% of doctors in the United States are Black or African American. And in those, so that leaves 95, or no, because there are a lot of Asian doctors as well, but the majority of the doctors are white. And they have grown up with their white idea of proper ways to mourn and proper ways that things should be done. And so when those doctors are serving in places where it's people of color or the Latino community, where whatever, they are unable to deal with, and I'm saying deal with quotes, the way that these different cultures mourn. And it's terrible. It looks different in every culture, and we don't have the ability, white people don't have the ability to understand or have any tolerance to let other people mourn in the way that they need to mourn. So I hear you. And you know, when growing up in a different culture where death already has been ingrained in and part of the your upbringing, and it's literally in what you see and hear and do. And of course, there would be a completely different idea of what to do then at the end of life, and how to celebrate and how to mourn and how to, it's completely different.
Any quick follow-up, Ola?
I think it's more of a statement than a follow-up. So I think the problems are the same. And when I say problem, I mean like the inability to cross-pollinate out to auspice people. And the fact that like there's a lot of disconnection in that process is also like very, 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 very easy to see here. So I think the missing link or the bridge to that way of thinking is perhaps like what they usually call like comprehensive education of everyone, to understand like base reality and start to like play with and transform that process in and of itself. But I can tell you from my experiences of seeing people die and being near death and seeing how people relate when people die, that the problem is the same. It might not be like a one-size-fits-all solution, but it's easy to see. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. There is, so that's another reason why I teach community death care specifically. So what has happened with the death doula movement is it has become overwhelmingly white driven and overwhelmingly female driven. So then these death doulas want to go into different communities and serve them. And what I try to teach is community death care, where your own community supports the community you're familiar with is the community you're supporting. So that you're not trying to go in and push, so that a white person is not trying to go into a community of color and say, why aren't you accepting hospice? You should be accepting this really great service, because they have no idea how poorly the medical system has treated that community for so long. So the importance of community death care, I think, is should be at the forefront, where you serve your community because you know your community. It's not a one size fits all, exactly as you said. I am not going to get a certificate and get trained and then lo and behold, I can treat everybody the exact same way. That's really common, where people think, oh, I love everybody, I can support everybody. That's cool. But if you don't know where they're coming from, if you don't know their history, their community's history, you're not going to be able to support them in the way that's best for them. So empowering communities, giving over the education and handing that over to them, empowering them so they could support themselves, is essential.
Awesome. Thank you, Ola. So we're at the top of the hour. And Anne-Marie, any closing thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
No, just thank you for entertaining this talk, everybody. It was wonderful to speak with all of you, and I recognize some of you from other Stoa sessions as well. So it's cool to see you, and keep in touch if you'd like.
And where could people want to know more about your work? Where is the best place to check it out?
I have two websites. I'm in between websites right now. So Anne-Marie Keppel at AnneMarieKeppel.com and StardustMeadow.com. Anne-Marie Keppel. Should I type it out?
Yeah, I'll make some closing announcements, and I'll also put that in the YouTube channel. So I'll make some announcements now, but Anne-Marie, thank you so much for coming to the Stoa. It's a lovely session. So glad to have you. And next, I think our next session, is Susan Campbell. She's coming back. She had a tech issue last time. She's the godmother of the authentic relating movement. So practice for authentic living with Susan Campbell, August 3rd at 12 p.m. Eastern time. And I'll be posting a bunch of events for the August lineup is set. Stephen Jenkinson is going to be our philosopher in residence. He just released a new book, so he's coming in for a 3-part series. So that's going to be a really interesting one. So that being said, everyone, thanks so much for coming to the Stoa today.